Hey, I'm Mike.
And I'm Blake.
And this is Prove It, where we talk about our experiences.
And the validity of those experiences will be questioned.
So, first I wanted to address the situation here.
The redneck Joe Dirt look over here?
Yeah, the Joe Dirt. So, I love Halloween, and I often dress up like superheroes. Not that I'm anything close, but my best superhero costume ever was Deadpool. And they just came out with a movie, Wolverine and Deadpool. So I wanted to do Wolverine. So this is me growing out my Wolverine facial hair. I know it looks terrible right now. The other thing is the OU hat. My bachelor's degree is from OU. And in solidarity, because OU is terrible as of right now, and we just had the Red River rivalry. Let me take a little sip of this because we got the shit kicked out of us.
Yeah, with the Baker Mayfield jersey being planted with the Texas flag.
However, I will say Lincoln Riley did take a number of starters and kind of tainted us. And now Lincoln Riley is actually being fired and being replaced at USC. But if you look at the first year that Lincoln Riley went to USC with like 8 of our starters, he was like 10-1. And we shit the bed. So we're still building, and we'll see where it goes. But OU will make a comeback. So again, in solidarity, I'm wearing my OU hat. I typically wear my fan stuff when we lose, because that's when you're a real fan, is when you support during losses. And let me tell you, I started OU in 1997, and all we did was lose. I also want to do a quick housekeeping thing. We got a comment, if anybody had the chance to see it before I took it down last week. It said something along the lines of, on your next podcast, maybe you should say something about how you continue to try to talk to your ex-wife whenever she's got somebody new. Well, the fact of the matter was, as I've said before, we were best friends for like 6 years.
Yep.
We were married for 4 years. After I left and divorced her, she was still calling me over to help with like honeydew stuff, hang curtains and whatnot, and a few other things. Until I finally said, hey, there's no way that I can date someone else while I'm still hanging out with my ex. And at some point, she cut ties with me. It's been 13 years since we were divorced, and I've maybe reached out 4 or 5 times just because I changed my phone number. I moved to Texas and said, hey, just wanting to see how you're doing. And she wouldn't respond. So obviously, I've talked about her several times on the podcast already, and this is just number 3. So she was a big part of my life. And because of that, I wanted to let her know that she was in the podcast. And I don't know if it was her or someone else, but that's when the comment was posted. And I want to say, if reaching out has ever been offensive, I'm sorry. If the podcast was ever offensive, I'm sorry. Of course, that could have been a discussion, not in the comments.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway.
And I just want to say, going off of that too, is that neither of us have any malice towards our exes, no hard feelings or anything. We're doing this just to put our stories out there, talk to each other, get to know each other even more, because I always tell you beforehand, I don't want to know your stories. I want them to be a complete surprise when we come on here. But both of our exes, there's nothing against you. We're not trying to slander you or anything. It's all going to be respectful. But like Mike said, you guys were a big part of our life for a very long time. And yes, we're going to have stories like that. That's going to have to include you. But once again, we're not trying to offend or anything like that.
With that said, today we're going to talk about tattoos and how they can move into friendships or be a result of friendships, just tattoos and friendships in general. So I've got kind of a lengthy story. It's kind of a 3-parter, but it's pretty funny.
All right.
So when I was 17, well, actually 15, I started working at Sonic. I think we've talked about that a little bit before, just you and I. So 15, started working at Sonic, started as a car hop, moved up. Anyway, I'm 17. I recently went through a breakup with my first girlfriend.
Oh my God, high school love.
Now, this is also when I was kind of at the peak of my martial arts training and competing, when I was doing tournaments and Kyokushinkai karate. But I graduated high school at 6'2", 145 pounds. So anyway, I'm working one night at Sonic, and I'm the fountain worker. I make the drinks, and back then, this is like 95. The speakers were actual speakers. It wasn't electronic. It was just like a one-way radio or two-way radio, and you turn it on, and we would pencil write the order as if it was like some old country diner.
So it's kind of one of those,
And that's exactly what it was. And you literally would write down the order and then look up the prices of each and then take a calculator and put in the tax. Everybody who took the orders memorized the prices with and without tax. And anyway, that's a whole nother lifetime ago.
Oh, yeah.
The guys in the kitchen and I would always kind of mess around and talk shit or throw stuff at each other. This one guy claimed to be a martial artist too, and he was significantly older than me. He was probably like mid-30s, and I'm 17. And then there was this other guy, and he hadn't been there real long, but he was pretty like tattooed up guy, and I thought he was probably mid to late 20s or whatever. And he had this like long, curly, kind of greasy hair, you know, just a greasy biker looking dude.
Like those 80s hair bands, like Van Halen and stuff like that.
like a hairband guy or a old school biker or something. You know, back in the 80s, 90s, it was very, very specific. If, you know, like whether you're in high school or after high school, you fit into certain crowds. You know, The Outsiders is one of the best movies that really prove that. I'm sure there's something that's not PC in that movie or something I've said. But the long and short of it was we all kind of talked shit back and forth. And I took this order and I called the order out, and there was this dude, the curly-headed guy, and I don't remember exactly what I said. I'm sure I was being a smart ass because I was kind of cocky at that point, because before that I used to get jumped and beat up all the time, and then I started martial arts, and now all of a sudden I know how to defend myself. So I was kind of cocky. So I'm sure I said something stupid, but that was the nature of the beast. You know, that's what we did. And this guy, he walked straight towards me from the kitchen, and he just blasted me in the face. Just punched me straight in the face, probably like in my cheekbone or something. And I was like, oh, he's having a bad day. Like, and again, mid-90s, you know, it wasn't I'm going to call my lawyer and file charges. This was, you know, even though I was 17, this was two men fighting. Somebody overstepped a line or whatever, and the other one let him know it. But I grabbed him by the hair and hit him a few times and kind of pushed him away, and he came again. I kicked him in the chest, hit him a few times, and then he got broke out by the manager. Which the funniest thing was, I think, so we separated, and our two biggest things was, did we damage anything? Not like, is this guy going to sue me or call the cops? Am I going to get arrested? We're just like, did we break anything? Is it coming out of our check?
That's a big thing.
Yeah, because I was 17 years old. Like, I didn't have any money, and he clearly didn't have any money. So we both get sent home. Well, as I said before, I also had just broken up with my ex-girlfriend, my first girlfriend ever. My first.
Damn, you were a late bloomer.
I was. I didn't have hair of my own, so I was like 16, bro. I used to like daily look for pubes.
Oh my God.
Bro, I was so embarrassed because I played sports and stuff, you know, and like you're looking around and these dudes are walking out of the bushes and you're just fucking Ken doll.
You were a guy that wore swimming trunks in the shower, weren't you?
No, I just couldn't hide it really well, but I would just go straight home. But nonetheless, my girlfriend and I just broke up. She had cheated on me, and I jumped in my car, and I had come from a really small town in southwestern Oklahoma, and about the only thing we had was the drag, which was the one highway that went through town, and if you drive for 10 minutes, you'll go through the whole town, and you just do circles. I used to call it getting dizzy.
Yeah.
So I just came off of this little squab with a grown man, and I'm a teenager, but I'm a competitive martial artist. So I wanted to just go drive around. My parents were very strict on curfew or whatever, so I was going to do the drag. Well, I don't get on the drag for 5 or 10 minutes, and who drives up next to me? My ex-girlfriend driving her new boyfriend's truck that she cheated on me with. And he was sitting in the passenger, or the middle, and then on the passenger side was like his best friend. We come to a stoplight, and his friend like hook shots a beer bottle and hits the hood of my car.
Oh my God.
Now, this is like 1995. I've got an 85 Pontiac 6000. Because I'm poor, I think I bought it for $250 or something, and you had the ignition was broken. You pulled the thing and you turned the key, and then there was a toggle switch to hit the starter on it. But anyway, the point was he threw a beer bottle and hit my damn car.
Yeah, you make a bad day even worse.
Yeah, like that's disrespectful as hell.
Oh yeah.
So like they pull off. Well, she didn't live but maybe a half mile away, and so I get behind them, and she goes straight to her house, pulls up in the driveway. I park the car in the middle of the street. And the guy that threw the beer bottle, the best friend, the boyfriend's best friend, comes down and walks straight up to me. So he puts his hands up, and I think he wants to fight. So I headbutted him in the face. Like,
Oh my God.
well, so in my head, and I've done this many times. I don't want to sound like I'm a thug, but I've gotten into some altercations, and when I do, I feel like if I headbutt you, it's not the same as just hitting you really hard.
No, it's a show of dominance, really, because
Yeah, it's like I can beat you over my head. I don't even need to use my hands. Plus, I don't really want to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? I want to mitigate the amount of hurt while still leaving the impression, I guess. So I headbutted him, and I spun him around. I put him in a rear naked choke. Shout out to the UFC. This is right about the time UFC started. I think UFC started in '93.
somewhere
And
around
this
there.
was,
Yeah.
and I had started studying a little jiu-jitsu because we can spend time on that, but somebody
Well, that's
Threw me
for
down.
another time, you know.
Yeah, they threw me down and choked me out a bunch of times. So anyway, we went to the ground. I put him in a rear naked choke, and the boyfriend runs over, and he's got cowboy boots on. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna stomp on his head," and I'm like, "Do that, you're next." As I'm smiling up from the rear naked. So this guy, I didn't get it locked in all the way, so he bit me. And you can still see there's a scar right there.
Oh, yeah.
Granted, yeah, that's a prove it moment, but it could be a scar from anything. But that's where he bit me, so I pulled his head back and I bit his forehead. So then he reached back and he grabbed my genitals and started squeezing. So I bounced his head off the asphalt a couple of times, and then I let him go because at that point, yeah, most part, whenever you get in scuffles when you're that age, you know, as long as nobody jumps in and just really hurts someone, people let it go, and then once it's done, and you go on about your way. So I jumped in my car and I drove off, but we were in the middle of the neighborhood, in the middle of a street. So I'm like, okay, we've been out here a little too long. It's time to go.
Yeah.
And nothing actually ever happened from that point forward with that situation.
Well, back in the 90s, you think about it, people is be a real man, step up. You know, you want to fight, let's freaking fight. No, I'm going to go call the cops and press charges.
Yes, take it outside.
Yeah.
Didn't mean we're going to go through arbitration. We're going to call our lawyers and go out and have arbitration out on the patio. It meant we're going to go out there, and I've challenged you, and if you're down, we're going to knuckle up, and at the end of it, you'll probably go buy each other a beer.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, either go buy each other a beer, or you guys become friends after that. It's like, man, remember that time you whooped my ass?
So that's perfect. Oh my God, perfect segue. I can't believe it. I swear this is not written down. We didn't rehearse this. So fast forward. So that's like 95, right?
Yeah.
So in 2007, I did my second tour in Iraq. 2008, we came back. My buddy back in my hometown, the same place where all that happened, owned a tattoo and piercing studio. Poor Boy Way tattoos, Poor Boy Way novelties. It's not there anymore, but anyway, he was a Marine Corps veteran as well, and I came back and I wanted to get this tattoo, so I went to his shop and I started getting tattooed, and of course, got to make mention, Kirsty was in Iraq with me that second tour as well, and she went with me for the tattoo.
Okay.
So I have this big Celtic knot that goes over my shoulder that it took 3 different sittings because the Celtic knots are so.
I understand.
Yeah, like my artist, the first couple of times, he kept having to get up and get his eyes back together because he was going cross-eyed. Okay?
Yeah.
It's really cool. I mean, I don't know.
We can take a picture of it and put it out here for people to see. So.
Oh, by the way, I'm wearing Captain America for the whole Marvel thing. So get back from Iraq in 2008, and I'm like, hey, I want to get this tattoo. I think it's really cool. I've designed it myself and everything. And I went through 2 sittings with this one artist at my friend's shop, Pull Me Away. And I had my last sitting because there was a piece here, a piece on my back, and then I had to have a piece connected. And I got there, and my buddy was like, man, that artist isn't with me anymore. He's like, I don't know if he left or fired him or whatever. And I was like, well, do you have somebody you trust as much? You know, because he's done a great job at this point. And you know, some tattoo artists are great at portraits, but they can't do lettering for shit.
Oh, 100%.
Save their life, you know. And then there's the guys that have fine line work, but their shading is trash. And I was like, for what I have, do you have somebody in the shop? Because I've been tattooed by 3 or 4 of his artists. And I was like, do you have somebody that you'd feel comfortable finishing this? Because it's got to tie in. It's got to look cohesive.
Like one artist.
Yeah. And he was like, absolutely, man. He's like, I got this new guy. He's fantastic. And I was like, well, let's go. And of course, you know, I get a great discount because it's my friend.
Yeah, friends and family discount.
Yeah, absolutely. So I get in there, and you know, I'm talking to the guy, and he's looking at it. I also try to give the artist a little space to put their artistic view into it. And you know, he's telling me, oh, we should run it along the muscle line here, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah. And let's call the tattoo artist Richie Cunningham. Right?
Okay.
My tattoo, right?
Yeah.
Like Happy Days.
Yeah, Happy Days,
know?
yeah.
And I do that because he's kind of the bad boy, you know? So Richie Cunningham. So I'm sitting here listening to this guy, and, you know, he's a smoker, so he's got a little gravel to his voice, and he's got a cadence. And I think a lot of the cadence came from being a tattoo artist. You know, you're sitting there doing a line or whatever.
Stroke.
No, let's get the right kind of line. You're doing a tattoo line, and you have to pause and respond to your customer and wipe, and so there's a certain cadence to their voice. So this guy had kind of a gravelly smoker voice, but he had a specific cadence, and I was like, did you ever work at Sonic?
Oh, no way.
And he goes, yeah. And he looked at me and he goes, you're that mother. And I was like,
that motherfucker.
Oh, because when he was at Sonic, he didn't go by Richie Cunningham. He just went by like Rick.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't make the connection looking on the wall and seeing his stuff that said, you know, Richie Cunningham. And I was like, man, full circle, huh? And he just kind of looks at me, and we had some good banter, you know, leading up to that. And obviously he's in my buddy's shop. He works for my buddy. And on top of that, when we encountered each other at Sonic, I was 6'2", 145 pounds. Now I'm 6'2", 200.
Yeah.
And I've spent 2 tours in Iraq and continued my martial arts training and stuff. So it's a lot different look, you know. Instead of me being that little scrawny high school kid and him being in his late 20s or something, now we're both grown men, and I put on, you know, 30 pounds.
So nothing but muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Because we had just come back from Iraq. So anyway, he goes, man, I was like, yeah, crazy things, man. And we just kind of laughed it off. And he goes, you know, you probably should have waited till after I gave you the tattoo since it's going on your back. He said, I could put dicks on there or whatever. It was kind of a chain.
Remember that shit.
I could put a chain of dicks or something. And I was like, well, we'd have to revisit the past. But anyway, he did a great job. And saw him a couple more times after that when he was working for my buddy. My buddy's shop's closed, like I said. But we actually were friends. I mean, we didn't like go to each other's barbecues, but we were very friendly. And
yeah, you're familiar with it.
Yeah, and you know, if he and I had seen each other at a barbecue or something, we would talk like we were old friends.
Probably pass each other a beer and everything.
Yeah, that's, I don't condone violence. I guess just people get into it over petty things like that was. Obviously, we were both combat veterans. But back then, nobody was really trying to just really hurt someone, hospitalize them. You get into a scuffle, you best the guy, you knock him on his back or something, and then you give him a hand, help him up, and you doctor your wounds, and you go have a beer. It's so much different.
It's like, hey, we good?
Yeah, literally. Like when they've clearly lost, instead of just continuing, most of the time back then, you would just say, hey, you good?
Yeah.
I got a story for that exact phrase, but I figured you had got to have something as far as tattoos and stuff.
Well, it was funny. You're talking about, finding an artist you trust and everything. And, you getting your first tattoo. Well, it wasn't your first tattoo, but getting that tattoo after you came back from Iraq.
It was my biggest. My first tattoo was very small. It was like 45 minutes, and this was 10 hours. So,
yeah. So, I could go either way with that, but a lot of people end up getting tattoos when they come back from a combat zone. Got that extra cash on you and everything, but this is going to bring back some stuff from our first podcast, actually.
Okay.
The pilot episode that we had. But
I love revisiting.
Oh, yeah. And, it might spark up a little debate, but that's all good banner here, too. But
Love it.
I decided I'm going to get my first tattoo before I left for Afghanistan the first time. Yeah, you already know where I'm going with this.
Man, I know a guy who I graduated high school with, but that's another time.
But I flew home on leave. Everybody takes leave. Well, active duty, we all take leave before we end up deploying. I flew home on leave, was with my mom, and I was like, hey, I want to go get this tattoo. And I had a picture of what I wanted and everything. Did some research, found the best guy in the area, drove about 40 minutes down the road. Go in there, he's like, yeah, I'm just going to enlarge it and print it out. We're going to put it on your back, let it dry, and we'll tattoo it to you. I'm sitting here thinking, oh, yeah, this is my first tattoo, by the way. I want to say that I was 22, 23 years old.
The longer you think, the older you are, bro. Trust me. The 22, 23.
Yeah, so I was living in Italy at the time, so.
Poor guy.
Hey, But I flew home, and I'm thinking, this is going to take like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh, you didn't know about that side of it.
Yeah, I didn't know about that side of it. So he's like, oh, I got you. And I'm like, oh, how much? He goes, $200. And this is a big tattoo on my back. So I'm sitting there in this chair, and he was nice enough. He's like, oh, this is your first tattoo? I'm going to let you lean on the board instead of, no, I'm going to let you lay down instead of have you lean on the board.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool. So I lay down and I fell asleep. I fucking fell asleep until he hit my clavicle. That shooting pain was like, oh, okay. But for the price of I think it was $250, it was cheap. He said, oh, because you're in the Army and you're deploying, I'm going to give you this discount, man. Straight up. And I got a huge Celtic cross on my back. Yeah.
My buddy Robbie from the last podcast has the same tattoo.
So on the Celtic cross, down the middle of it says family, and going across says faith. And then around the circle of it says, through him who gives me power, anything is possible. Now, that's kind of faded out. I meant to get it retouched and everything, but I might get just some Celtic knots put over that instead of, because it's tiny wording and everything.
Yeah.
But
we're both Irish. Well, I'm Scotch-Irish. It's not Scottish, it's crap.
I'm Irish-German, show.
Oh.
I got the drinking genes. Here I am thinking that, hour and a half. Now, this thing took 4 hours straight. He's like, hey, we got to take a break after like an hour and a half. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, I need to go out for a smoke.
So what makes a Celtic cross is there's Celtic knots on there, which is what I have, is just a giant Celtic knot. So is the Celtic knots around the center, like the traditional one, or is there Celtic knots around the outside edges?
It's around the outside.
Okay, nothing in the middle?
So like there's a circle, and then the Celtic cross goes through, and then in the middle it says family and faith.
Yeah. And so for anybody that doesn't know, the Celtic knot is a representation of the beginning, middle, and end. It's a continuous knot because there's life, death, rebirth, So
Not a
it's,
Celtic knot in that. It's just a Celtic cross with the circle and the cross.
oh, okay, I got
So,
you. I got you.
Going back to my religion, my big thing is that I didn't want to deploy and have the chance of, maybe getting injured or dying, but I wanted to have my family and my faith with me.
I did. The girlfriend that I was dating at the first time was Catholic. Actually, I think my wife was Catholic too.
So
Something about those Catholic schoolgirls. But anyway, my first tour, I was given St. Michael, war and travel or something.
St. Michael is protection.
Oh,
isn't it?
no, St. Christopher.
Oh, protection, yeah.
Protection, yeah. St. Christopher, I took it with me.
Yeah.
I want to be considerate and somebody does something for me.
So
but,
I'm not
anyway.
Catholic. I'm Christian. My whole family was Catholic. I'm the only one. Me and my aunt are the only ones that are Christian. And I know you're atheist, but we've already went down that road.
Yeah,
but you did grow up that way.
But what do they say about being in a foxhole and you start taking fire? Everybody finds religion when they're in a foxhole taking fire.
100%.
You know?
Well, I've never had direct fire. I've always had the indirect fire. For you guys out there that don't know what we're talking about, direct fire is going to be like somebody shooting a gun at you. While indirect fire is like incoming missiles or incoming mortar rounds or something like that.
Artillery, airstrike, that sort of thing. Not somebody pointing at you in a crosshair and shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've never had the direct fire. I've always had mortars around me. So
You know what's funny? I'm going to segue from this, but think of an RPG. So technically you have them in the crosshairs, but they're so inaccurate. I know because I had 3 of them shot at me before.
yeah, exactly.
What you see in movies, RPGs do not go on a string. They're
No.
so squirrely. They're so old and whatnot.
Like when I was in Afghanistan, it was completely different. They were using all that Russian stuff that was left from the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. But, well, I'm not going to get into our deployments because our deployments we could talk for hours on that.
That's a great point. So to segue from there, you earlier told a story about your first tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
So I actually have a really good story about my first tattoo. So after my first deployment in Iraq in 2003, when we came back in 2004, I had a good friend of mine who, former Marine, he didn't get to do any combat. He got medically discharged, but he was down in the Florida Keys. He's a great dude. He does rock climbing and rappelling instruction. He does like snorkeling, scuba diving instructor. And he got involved back then in 2003, 2004. He was involved with the Boy Scouts. So he used to do a lot of like high ropes courses and stuff down in Tallahassee, Oklahoma. And when I came back in 2003, he was down in Key Islamorada of the Florida Keys working at a Boy Scout camp. And I had always said, if I ever get a tattoo, it was going to be the kanji symbol for brother, because I'm an only child, and all of my friends have always been very close to me like my brothers. And I always said that if I ever got a tattoo, I'd get a kanji symbol for brother, and then my friends, who are also like brothers to me, would get it as well.
Yeah.
So come back. One of my friends who, I think we've had pictures of him up from the last podcast, Eric, he and I drove from Norman, Oklahoma to Key Islamorada. It was like a 22-hour drive. We did 6-hour shifts. One slept in the back seat and one drove. Yeah, I don't want to sleep in the front seat. So anyway, the long story short, we get there. We volunteered at the Boy Scout camp for a couple of weeks with my buddy Ronnie and a couple of his friends he'd made good friends with. And I was like, Ronnie, let's get the Brotherhood tattoo. And we went to a tattoo shop, and for those who don't know, I have a vasovagal response, which
yeah.
If I get blood drawn or if I get needles or whatever shots, then I get an adrenaline rush to my brain, which blocks the blood flow, and I pass out. So no matter how big and strong and tough you might think you are, basic biology sometimes gets you.
Oh, I understand that. I get the vagal response with cold IVs.
Oh, wow, yeah. We can talk about that another time, too. My first deployment, that the military nurse taught me how to overcome it, so I've been able to overcome it. However, when you get stuck like 5,000 times from a tattoo needle, it's a different story. So anyway, we go into this shop, and Ronnie and I are going to get the tattoo. You know, he was one of my best friends. Basically, in college and years after. So we went and we're looking at a book of like kanji symbols, right? And we find the one that says brother. And we went to the tattoo artist, and he goes, yeah, it's really important if you ever, since it was my first tattoo, if you ever get other symbols, like other languages or whatever, find a legitimate book or something to pull it from, because it could just say dumb white boy.
Oh yeah. Fuck you, I suck dick.
which I actually, when I was a personal trainer, I had two girls who both had Arabic on their forearm, and it was supposed to say cousin. It was after my second tour in Iraq, and I knew an Iraqi guy that could speak and read Arabic, and he looked at their tattoos and he goes, it says your male cousin on your father's side. And it was two females. So anyway, we confirmed it in the book or whatever, and then I'm leaned over, like you were talking about, like sitting. I had to sit up because it was this little baby tattoo.
Oh yeah.
Like I said earlier, it was like $60. It probably took maybe 30 minutes or something. And we got halfway through, and I turned white, and I started getting dizzy, and I was like, hey, man, can we just take a break? I didn't go all the way out. Although about 4 months ago, I had to have something cut open, and I did go all the way out. So I'm not that tough. But anyway, got the tattoo. My buddy Ronnie got the tattoo as well. And over the course of several more years, probably, I think there was maybe 8 of us total that all had that tattoo. And it was cool because, like, one of my friends who was also in the Army, he got it on his shoulder, but he got it so it looked like it was being cut out of his skin. Another guy did the same thing on his calf. One guy had it on his calf, I think. They had flames coming out of it. So everybody had it in a different place and different styles. Yeah. I think Ronnie's, he has a badass dragon, kind of like what I have, and it's got the brother symbol inside the dragon, like kind of cradling it. Because I think he got his dragon tattoo was in the Marine Corps. But anyway, that was just us connecting, and we were like brothers, and that was the first tattoo that I ever got.
Yeah. So, like, I've got a matching tattoo with a couple friends of mine, too. We have a batch of arrows, one going up through the middle and the other 2 crossed. All 3 of us were going through the shit, but we're 3 peas in the pods, you know. Decided, it's like, hey, you know, we've all been here for each other through this rough time, you know. Let's get something to symbolize that we'll always be there for each other.
Yeah.
I mean, we still talk every once in a while, but we just don't have that connection. A little bit of a falling out, but what I've learned is that when it comes to friendships, man, like, you know, with the end of every friendship comes brand new friendships. Yeah. And it's always a vicious cycle like that. And I know this is a little mythological. I don't know the word I'm trying to say, but
methodical.
There we go. I know it's a little methodical, but like I felt like I had to move on, and maybe it was a blessing. It wasn't my decision to cut back on it or anything like that, and. You know, I have no ill will towards them or anything like that. I still love them to death. I'll still always be there for them. But, like, for instance, our friendship, it's bloomed into what we have right now.
Absolutely.
And, you know, me being the person I am, I go to raves, as I said before. I go to festivals all the time. Mm-hmm. I have a whole festival family that I've met because of this.
Just like your military family. We have our military family, a real family, yeah. Our high school friends, whatever.
And the military family, I respect the hell out of my military family because at any given moment, like, people don't understand this. Like you were talking about, it's a brotherhood. Even if it's a female friend in the military, it's still a brotherhood, sisterhood kind of thing. We could pick up with those people like we just left them yesterday.
Oh, yeah. But the fact of the matter is, if something ever happened, we had to pick up arms, whether domestic or abroad. We can reach out to each and every one of those people, even if we butted heads. If they were good soldiers, we could reach out to them, and it would be like we just saw them yesterday. And that's kind of a good point. You know, you can have different pockets of friends. You can have those friends that are your military friends, and, you know, like I mentioned with Robbie, we don't really talk anymore, but I still consider him a good friend. We had great times, and you've got your family, you've got different pockets, and I'm not trying to be an ass, but it's really true. So I was driven and ambitious from a young age, and I had several friends that weren't necessarily, and even now, that weren't necessarily as ambitious or weren't necessarily as hard work.
100%. I get
They
it.
might have been couch potatoes, whatever. But I found myself being really hard on them. Like, when are you going to get your shit together? When are you going to do something with your life? Like, where are you going? Where are you going to be when you're 40? And Christy, once again, the ex-wife, told me, you know what? Maybe it's better if you just take them for the value that they provide within your relationship, within your friendship. If they're just a good drinking buddy or a good golfing buddy, then don't try to pull them into who you want them to be. Let them be who they are, and then just enjoy them for who they are as that person. And I've taken that to heart.
And I feel like that's something that both of us are very much alike. And that's something that we try to do. I like to call it, like, we try to take broken people and fix them. But, like, you're talking different pockets. I call them circles. And, you have your circle of military friends, your circle of family, your civilian friends. But sometimes...
And they don't always mix.
Oh, no, they don't mix at all. Like, I thought that was holy shit, man. Oh, man, I could go on about that. But the thing is that at some point, some of those circles overlap. Like, military friends become family. Like, they actually meet your family, and they become part of your family, and they're like, I've had military friends over for Thanksgiving with my family.
Or you literally marry them.
True. No, I've never been married to somebody in the military, so I can't say that.
We're talking about becoming family or whatever.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
different circles, and in different circles, sometimes they do become something more, or you become a godfather or things like that. But, we wanted to kind of connect both some negative interaction that I had and how it eventually became a friendship, and then some other things and how they become friendships. And, I give a lot of advice that I've been given, because the one thing that I know is what I don't know, and I've learned a lot about relationships and stuff, and I've been a very difficult person to be friends with or to be in a relationship with. And I've had to learn over the years, and hopefully, our listeners can take a little bit of that, and whether it's good advice or bad advice, it's at least knowledge.
Well, and it's not about good advice or bad advice either. It's not dismissing what you're saying, but it's more of learn from our mistakes too. Like, take our mistakes, take our experiences, the good and the bad, and build your relationships off of those. I want to be the first person to tell anybody, don't take for granted your civilian friends, anybody in the military.
Yeah.
They have a very different outlook on life.
Now, don't just limit yourself to your military friends. Meet everybody. They're all walks of life.
Well, the thing is that they've went a different path through life. They've experienced different things.
Yeah.
But they've seen life in a completely different way. We were raised like, this is the way.
Yeah.
This is not the quote of the freaking Mandalorian or anything, but this is the way. This is how your friendship should be. You can't be friends with this person. You can't be friends with this person. Well, these people who have lived freely, our civilian friends, being able to do whatever they want. And that's something I've learned from.
Yeah.
And you can't take that for granted, man.
You could piggyback off of it, but I think this is a nice little kind of close. You can learn from anyone, positive or negative. A lot of my life growing up, I observed what I didn't want to be and learned from that and ran with it. Those were my lessons. Whether I had a mentor at the time or not, I knew I didn't want to be this. Maybe not my family, or it could have been somebody I went to school with or whatever, but I knew I didn't want to be this. And I used that to learn from. And I've been in very high leadership positions, and I've learned from the lowest guy. I mean, we can talk about this another time, but there's specific things in combat now that we use that were invented by the lowest ranking soldiers.
Oh, yeah. And I will piggyback off that. If you
Absolutely, yes, please.
If you're okay with me just ending it with this quote.
Yeah, I would.
It's a direct quote from one of my leaders. It's like always be willing to learn from somebody, whether that is somebody that is higher ranking than you, someone that is lower ranking to you, or if it's the bum sitting on the corner. Everybody has something they can teach you.
That's right. Yeah, don't let your ego get in the way. So with that, if you get a chance, like, share, subscribe. We'd love to hear any comments, and we'll respond to them. It is a reason it's called Prove It.
Yeah, if you want us to put up any pictures or anything to prove that what we've talked about today, please comment. We really look forward to your feedback and everything like that. Once again, thank you for listening and watching.
All right, cool.